I walked into my home and found my wife, Stacy, dressed to seduce another man. My world imploded in that instant. Joe Wexler, our so-called friend, had manipulated and lured her into his trap. Fury took over, and our confrontation turned into a scene straight out of a nightmare. This is my raw, unfiltered tale of betrayal and vengeance. You won't believe how it ends. Stay tuned. Some of my friends think my job is very exciting, and sometimes I agree. But today was not one of those days. I'm a commercial photographer, and I love what I do. I wouldn't change it for the world. Sometimes, though, I need to remind myself of that. Instead of being at the beautiful Peoria waterfront, taking photos of two models for a women's clothing line, I was driving north on I-55, about an hour from my home in Arlington Hills, a small suburb 25 miles northwest of Chicago. I had planned 3 days for the shoot and thought all was set. The weekend before, I had checked out the locations and noted the best times for sunlight. The models, favorites of the client, were from New York and Atlanta. They were supposed to be there when we arrived, but they weren't. A call to the agency revealed that they were given the wrong dates. I tried to find local Chicago models who could step in, but none were available for a 3-day shoot at such short notice. We had no choice but to cancel. The client wouldn't pay for 3 days of us just hanging out in Peoria. So we packed up and headed home. I was upset. As a self-employed person, no work means no money. Now, I faced 3 empty days. I couldn't plan anything else on such short notice. I had just gotten on Highway 355 heading home when I thought, why waste the rest of the week? It was only Wednesday afternoon. I still had Thursday and Friday. I decided to take a long weekend. My wife Stacy and I hadn't been on a vacation in a while. The sky was clear, and I started dreaming of a quiet getaway for just the two of us. I imagined us relaxing on a private balcony, sipping wine and watching the sunset. Suddenly, I thought of places we could go. I wanted somewhere intimate and romantic, not just any hotel. I was still thinking about it when I got home. It was almost dinner time. I expected Stacy to be in the kitchen, but she wasn't. The garage door opening hadn't brought her to the doorway to greet me, which was odd. I thought she might be upstairs, so I walked into the empty kitchen. You can't hear the garage door from the bedroom upstairs. I was about to go surprise her when I heard the click of heels on the tile. I turned the corner and saw her in front of the mirror. She looked stunning. She had been to a stylist. Her strawberry blonde hair was styled perfectly, and she wore the pearl necklace I had given her for our anniversary. She was dressed in a little black dress and black patterned silk stockings. She was wearing high heels, which made the sound I heard. She saw me in the mirror and screamed, "Shane, what are you doing home?" I could see the shock on her face. I asked her where she was going dressed up like that. She was caught off guard and stuttered, trying to say she was going out with her friends. I knew that didn't make sense. "With friends? What? Answer me," I demanded. She froze, scared. She knew I wouldn't hurt her, but she flinched as I reached past her to grab her purse. "What are you doing?" she asked nervously. "I'm checking your phone," I said firmly. "Wait, please, Shane, don't," she begged. She tried to grab her purse, but I was quicker. I warned her not to try that again. I never would hurt her, but I was very angry. She backed up against the wall as I opened the purse. Inside, in addition to her phone, was a box of condoms. I looked at her with disappointment. She looked like she was about to cry, but was too scared. I threw her purse on the floor and checked her phone. She had deleted her call history, but not the most recent ones. The first call was to her friend Joan, and the third to her best friend Gwen Carlson. But there was a call to Joe Wexler, who, along with his wife Doris, were supposed to be our friends. It wasn't enough to make accusations, so I checked her texts. Although she had deleted most, a few recent ones were to and from Wexler, starting just hours after I had left that morning. The last message was sent an hour before I got home. Stacy wrote, "Hello, love. My husband has left. Are you sure you can't come over now? I'm still in bed." Wexler replied, "Stop teasing me, beautiful. You know I can't take a day off. Plus, you said I couldn't visit your house." Stacy joked back, "I'm just teasing you." Wexler answered, "See you soon. Doris thinks I'm going out of town, so we have the whole night to ourselves." "Have you booked the room yet?" Stacy asked. "Yes, at the Country Hills Motel. It's right across from the restaurant. Hopefully there's a king bed." Wexler confirmed, "Yes, I'm sure of it." The next message from Wexler came at around 4 p.m. "This day is dragging. Can't wait." Stacy responded, "Me too. I bought a new dress just for you." Wexler said, "Really? Hope it's easy to take off." Stacy teased, "There's not much to it. You've managed before." Wexler laughed, "You're teasing again. I'll be on time. Meet me at 6 at the restaurant." I checked the time. It was 5:30 p.m., Country Hills Motel. I knew I had seen it, but couldn't place where. As I headed to the computer in my office, Stacy found her voice. "Wait, Shane, what are you doing? Please, let's talk." She pleaded, "I'm sorry, it was just supposed to be fun. Please don't do anything drastic." I ignored her and kept walking. She called it fun, but what was coming wouldn't be. I found the motel's address as soon as I searched it. It was a former Sheraton bought last year. Joe was in for a surprise. I went back to where I had left Stacy's purse. She was still following me, begging to talk. I took her car keys, then went to the kitchen and yanked the phone off the wall. "Shane, what are you doing?" Stacy cried out, tears streaming down her face. "I'm making sure you can't warn him," I growled. "Warn him? Shane, please don't do anything foolish," she begged. By then, I was heading upstairs. I yanked another phone cord from the wall. "Shane, please stop," she begged. "You're scaring me." I thought, maybe this will make her think twice in the future. There wasn't much else I could do. She could run to a neighbor to call, but I doubted she knew the number by heart. And what could she say? That her husband was coming to confront her lover? She followed me to the car, still yelling, but I was out of it. All I could think about was confronting Joe Wexler. I saw Stacy kneeling in the driveway, sobbing. As I drove off, my anger subsided a bit. But then I wondered why she did it. Was Wexler better than me? My anger flared up again, and I thought, we'll see about that. Traffic was heavy, and I didn't get to the Plateau restaurant across from the motel until 6:15 p.m. I parked and walked in. Stacy's phone vibrated with a text from Wexler. "You're late. Is everything okay?" "No, everything is not okay," I yelled as I stormed past the hostess. Wexler saw me and tried to stand up, but he tripped and fell. There was fear in his eyes as he looked at me. He tried to crawl away. "So he's more of a man than me, huh?" I thought. "What's going on?" Someone yelled from a distance, but I ignored it. I was focused on Wexler. "Wait, Shane, don't do anything crazy," he stammered as he stood up. "He's sleeping with my wife," I shouted. "Okay, maybe he deserves it, but not here," someone else said. The commotion settled down a bit. Joe had left his phone on the table, and I pocketed it. A staff member, probably a manager, took charge and called the police. While everyone was distracted, I walked out. I knew the police would be after me soon, but I had one more thing to do. I got into my car and pulled out Joe's phone to call his house. Doris answered, thinking it was Joe. "Hey, honey, I thought you were on a plane. Is everything okay?" I told her, "Joe's not on a plane, Doris. He's not even leaving town. He's here at the Plateau restaurant where he was supposed to meet my wife. They were having an affair." I said plainly, "What? Who is this?" She yelled, "I don't believe you." "This is Shane Burke, Doris, and I'm afraid it's true," I told her. I heard her sigh. Just then, a call came in. It was from a number I recognized. I decided to act. I asked Doris to hold on, pressed the switch button, and set up a three-way call. Stacy's voice came through loud and clear. "Jojo, get out now! Shane came home early and caught me. He knows, Joe. He's coming for you. Get out!" "You're terrible," Doris yelled from the other line. "I can't believe you." There was a pause before Stacy realized Doris was listening. "No, no!" Stacy yelled. I heard her start to cry. I suspected someone else was with her, probably Gwen, Stacy's best friend. I checked the number. It matched Gwen's, and she lived about 3 miles from us. Stacy probably went to Gwen's to use her phone, to avoid our neighbors knowing her business. Our friends likely had Joe's number too. The line went dead, and I could hear Stacy sobbing in the background. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I thought about the damage done in just 1 hour. 2 families were in turmoil. Joe and Doris had a son. While Stacy and I had no children yet, I wondered why. I thought she was happy. What went wrong? Tears started to roll down my cheeks. I still loved her deeply. How could she betray me? I kept asking myself these questions, but there were no answers. I was still sitting there when I heard police sirens. Soon, 3 police cars pulled up. They were quick. I sat there knowing Joe would likely tell them about me. They would come to my house anyway, so it was better to face them now. My car still had my camera gear, and I didn't want to leave it or have it towed. I called Marcy, my assistant. She had keys since she used my car for errands. She was just back from Peoria and was tired, but when I explained, she said she'd handle it. She'd park my car in my garage, then taxi back to hers. She'd add the taxi fare to her expenses. I couldn't imagine working without her. With the car sorted, I had no excuses left. I went back to the restaurant where the police cars were parked outside. It seemed quiet. A man pointed me towards the bar. "They've all gone back," he said. I nodded and walked to the office door. I knocked and heard a voice inside. It was the manager, along with 3 officers and Joe, who was holding an ice pack to his swollen face. "I just found out he's been with my wife," I said. "I think I lost it a bit." One officer asked, "Is this the man who hit you, sir?" Before Joe could answer, the manager said, "Yes, that's him. Mr. Wexler, do you want to file a complaint?" The officer, who seemed the oldest, was taking charge. Joe was silent, probably thinking about how to explain this to his wife. I cut in, "If you're worried Doris will find out, she already knows," and tossed him his phone. He caught it and started crying. The officer asked him again if he wanted to press charges. Joe, crying, shook his head. The manager, seeming to sympathize with me, declined to charge me with causing a disturbance. Then the officer asked me for my ID. I handed over my driver's license. He took down my details and then focused back on Joe, advising him to get his jaw checked at a hospital. Joe was still crying and insisted he was fine. The officer gave me back my ID and said, "Okay, since no charges are pressed, you can go, but stay nearby in case we need you." "Kaiser Wexler is badly hurt, so things might change," Officer Doby said. "Yes, sir," I replied, putting my documents back in my wallet. "Mr. Burke, you seem to have a violent streak. How is Mrs. Burke?" I knew Officer Doby was just doing his job, but he was starting to bother me. "I'm not violent," I answered sharply. "Mrs. Burke is fine. I would never hit a woman under any circumstances. But if you think I'm such a bad guy, imagine coming home to find your wife ready to go out with one of your friends. How would you react?" "Okay," he replied. "I get it, but you're lucky. You could be in big trouble right now. Try to calm down and talk to your wife. It might not be as bad as you think." I laughed at his attempt to give marriage advice and thanked him with a smile. As I turned to leave, the manager spoke up. "Mr. Burke, I don't want to see you here again." "That's fine by me," I snapped. "I make friends quickly, that's for sure." As I left the parking lot, I thought about the officer's words. I was really lucky. I could be in jail right now. I walked through the parking lot and discovered another problem. It just wasn't my day. My car was missing. At first, I thought it was stolen with my equipment inside. Then I remembered I had called Marcy. Oh no, she got here faster than I expected. I looked around and sure enough, there was Mark's old Chevy across the lot. So what now? I reached for my phone but decided not to use it. I knew how tired she was and didn't want to bother her just to say it was all for nothing. I looked back. No, I wasn't going to return to that place just to call a taxi. Across the street there was the Country Hills Motel, another reminder of my wife's betrayal. I imagined my wife and that man in one of the rooms. I didn't want to go there any more than I wanted to see the restaurant again. This was crazy, I told myself. It's not rational. I can't blame a building for what happens inside. I crossed the street and entered the motel, just as I suspected. What my wife and her lover would have done if that assistant hadn't messed up the filming. I approached the front desk and a young, very kind girl greeted me. "Yes, sir. Can I help you?" "Could you give me a taxi number?" I asked. "Of course. Would you like me to dial it for you, sir?" It's amazing how a small kindness can change your mood. For her, it was a simple task, part of her job. But for me, it was the nicest thing I'd heard all day. I smiled and said, "That's very kind of you. Thank you." I noticed her name tag. "Electra. What a beautiful name." "Thank you," she said with a small smile, dialing the number. The taxi brought me to my garage. I entered the code and checked if my car was there. I didn't know what to expect when I went inside. Would Stacy be there or not? I had no idea what would happen next. I've never been in this situation before. I've never felt this way. Then reality started to sink in. I'd been running on adrenaline, but now it all hit me. My wife, the woman I loved, had cheated on me. My knees gave out. I had to sit on the steps to keep from falling. I took a few deep breaths and gathered myself. I entered the kitchen from the laundry room. The first thing I did was check for coffee. It wasn't there. Of course, she didn't expect me home. Why would she have made coffee? I started making coffee when I felt someone else was there. I looked towards the door.
Gwen, what are you doing here? Where is Stacy?
Turns out Stacy had given her a key.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. I didn't see your car and thought you were gone.
Stacy asked me to pick something up for her.
She's terrified to come home, Shane. She's scared to death,
her friend replied. This is nonsense. I've never hurt her or any other woman. She knows I would never hit her. She's not afraid you'll hit her, Shane. She's afraid of what you'll say to her. Fine. Keep her with you until I pack my things and leave, I growled. Shane, please don't do anything rash, she pleaded. Reckless, stupid, crazy. Everyone's telling me how I shouldn't react to my wife sleeping with another man. Tell me, Gwen, how should I behave? I never thought I'd be in this situation. Gwen looked down, sat at the kitchen table, and asked, Can I have a cup of coffee when it's ready? Of course, I said, finishing making the coffee and sitting opposite her. Now that the adrenaline was fading, sadness set in. I don't get it. I was only supposed to be away for 3 days. Couldn't she wait? Why would she ruin our marriage like this? Was I such a bad husband? Shane, if you were a bad husband, she wouldn't be so shocked. She wasn't calling Joe for his sake. She was worried about you, what you might do. She's never seen you so angry. Well, she certainly wasn't thinking of me when she decided to be with Joe Wexler. Gwen didn't know how to respond. And what could she say? I sat there, staring at the floor, waiting for the coffee to brew. Then a thought hit me. Could Gwen be involved? Gwen, did you know about this? Did you know she was cheating? I asked. No, Shane, I honestly didn't know until today, she replied. I was still suspicious. My wife lied to me. Why would her best friend tell me the truth? Gwen noticed my doubt. You don't believe me, do you? I don't know what to believe anymore, I said. Maybe you should go. Take what you need and leave. I need to be alone right now. She seemed surprised. Normally, I'm a friendly guy. Shane, don't let this change who you are, she said. It's already changed me, I snapped. I haven't hit anyone since I was a kid, and today I did. And yes, I hit Joe. If we were alone, it would have been worse. Are you going to be arrested? Gwen asked, concern in her voice. I don't think so. The cops came, but Joe didn't complain. Who knows, though? Maybe he'll change his mind. I'm sorry for Doris and their son. And for you two, she said, looking me in the eyes. Yeah, well, if you ever figure out what Stacy was thinking, let me know. I still can't believe this is happening. My whole world flipped upside down today. I didn't want to say any more. I'm sorry, Gwen. If you really didn't know, then I'm sorry. But if I ever find out you did know, I'll never speak to you again. Please just leave now, I said. Gwen stood up, looking sad. Okay, let me grab something for Stacy upstairs, then I'll go. As she left, the coffee maker finished, turning water into coffee. Gwen came back with Stacy's small suitcase. Shane, what should I tell Stacy? Can she come home? No, I don't want to see her or talk to her. Keep her with you, or she can use her credit card to stay at a motel. If you're not going to be here, she can come home Friday night, right? Gwen asked. No, I'll be staying at the studio's back room until I find an apartment. I walked Gwen to the door. Look, I'm sorry I got angry. I really loved Stacy. I can't forget or forgive this. Our marriage is over. Tell her I'm seeing the lawyer Monday. Gwen looked really sad. I'll tell her, Shane, I'm sorry, she said as she left. This is wrong. You love each other, were her last words as she drove away. I felt bad almost pushing her out. I liked Gwen and her husband, Jerry. We didn't know each other well, but we had been out a few times. I doubted she knew about the affair, but I couldn't be sure. And in my current mood, I didn't want company. I went back to the kitchen and poured myself some coffee. I sat there staring out the window, lost in thought. What was Stacy thinking? Why did she do it? I was brought back to reality by my growling stomach. I hadn't eaten since early morning because of the mess with finding models. Could this day really have fallen apart so fast? I didn't feel like cooking or going out, but I was hungry. I glanced at the clock. It was almost 10. I remembered a diner nearby that stayed open late. The food was greasy and not cheap, but it didn't matter. I just needed something to eat. The diner was nearly empty. I sat at the counter and a kindly older waitress came over with a menu and a pot of coffee. I quickly decided what I wanted. As she poured my coffee, I placed my order. While waiting for my meal, I pondered my future. The anger was gone, replaced by pain and regret. I wasn't one to forgive and forget easily. My food arrived. "Want to warm up, honey?" the waitress asked, pouring more coffee. I thanked her, but she had already moved on. I focused on my meal, trying to put my marital troubles aside for the moment. It was almost 11:30 when I left the diner. After the long day, I should have been exhausted, but a trace of adrenaline kept me alert. I didn't want to go back to an empty house after starting the car, so I just drove without a destination in mind. At 2 in the morning, I found myself parked in front of my studio. I still had my equipment in the car, so I brought it inside and then collapsed on the couch in the locker room. I was so tired that I fell asleep instantly. When I started to wake up, my ears were ringing. I lay there for a minute as sleep slowly faded and I became more awake. Sitting up, I swung my legs off the couch, trying to clear my head. I realized the ringing was my phone. "Hello?" I muttered, still groggy. There was a pause before the voice came through. "Hello? Is this Shane?" "Yes, it's me. How can I help?" I asked, glancing at the clock. It was 10:30 a.m. "This is Jerry Carlson. Did you know that Stacy spent the night with us?" Suddenly, I remembered everything from the day before. "Yeah, I told Gwen she could stay at the motel if she wanted, if that's okay with you." Jerry sounded hesitant. "It's not that. I just didn't want to get involved without checking with you first. Are you okay with it?" "I appreciate it, Jerry. Yes, that's fine. Are you all right? You sound off." "Just a long day yesterday," I replied. Jerry seemed unaware of the incident with Joe Wexler. "Joe Wexler, did you hit him?" "Yes, he was cheating with Stacy." "What? Why do you think that?" I asked. Jerry explained he heard about some issues from Gwen but didn't know the details. "Oh, I'll need to think about that. Look, Jerry, just until tomorrow night. I need some time to sort things out. Tell Gwen to send her home Friday night." There was a pause. "I think that will be okay, but I'm upset Gwen didn't tell me." "I'll let her stay until tomorrow night, but not a minute longer," Jerry said, sounding a bit calmer. "You know, I never liked Wexler. Always seemed too sneaky, a bit of a show-off, you know?" "Yeah, I'd never trust him around Gwen, that's for sure," I agreed. "Okay, Shane, I'll let you go. Thanks for filling me in. If you need anything, just let me know." "Thanks, Jerry, I appreciate it. Maybe I'll ask you to help me deal with Wexler later," I joked. He laughed. "At least you haven't lost your sense of humor. You're joking, right?" "I guess so," I said lightly. "Don't be too hard on Gwen. They've been friends since they were kids." "Yeah, I know. It still bothers me, though," I replied as he hung up. I sat for a few minutes thinking about what to do next. I didn't care much about furniture, but I needed things from my home office: books, my computer, printer, and some photography equipment for family events. I smiled to myself, realizing I wouldn't be doing much photography for a while. Despite not feeling hungry, I knew I needed to eat something. Once I started moving my stuff, I wanted to finish without stopping. I headed to Denny's nearby. After 3 cups of coffee and a big hamburger, I felt a bit better. Just as I finished, my phone rang. It was Marcy, my assistant. "Are you okay? I expected you to call needing bail." "No, the guy I hit isn't pressing charges. I'm okay." "God, Shane, are you sure they were cheating? Stacy just doesn't seem the type." "I'm sure, Marcy. No doubt about it. I'm moving into the studio's back room for now, so if you see a light there at night, don't worry. Shane, if there's anything I can do to help." "Thanks, Marcy. Nothing needed yet." We said goodbye, and I paid for my lunch before heading back to the studio to pick up the SUV. It took 3 trips between home and studio, but I managed to move everything I wanted. By 8 p.m., I was done. Hungry again, I stopped at a store and grabbed some microwave dinners. By 9:30 p.m., I felt lonely and incredibly sad. I lay down, wondering why I struggle so much with forgiveness. It's not by choice. Some people think it's a flaw in my character. Stacy saw this too, at our 10th high school reunion. As a teenager, I worked hard to buy my first car. Janet Walters was the first girl who rode in it. After a few months, I thought everything was perfect. Then one Saturday, Her mom told me Janet had gone out with friends instead of our date. I was confused and hurt. If it was something important, fine, but why not tell me? She should have at least called to let me know. I was sure she'd call on Sunday to apologize, but I heard nothing from her. By Monday, I was really upset. Janet and I had time to work on our own before lunch. We could have gone to the library, but I preferred to do my homework at school while Janet liked to browse fashion magazines at the library. I hadn't seen her since Friday and was eager to talk to her. When I walked into the library, I saw Janet and her friend Debbie at the magazine rack, chatting and laughing. They didn't notice me as I walked up behind them. I overheard them talking about their Saturday night. "I went on a date with Brad Turner," Janet was saying. "You're lucky, girl," Debbie chuckled. I knew Brad Turner. He was a bit older and had already graduated. I always thought he was full of himself. Janet continued, "I was supposed to go out with Shane, but I ran into Brad at the mall. He works at Car Boutique selling fancy car accessories. He bought me lunch and asked me out. I couldn't say no." "Does Shane know you went with someone else?" Debbie asked. "No way, I didn't tell him." "What excuse did you give him?" Janet replied, "I didn't really come up with anything. I thought about saying I was out with friends, but he knows all my friends. Brad picked me up early, so I left and let my mom handle Shane." They both found it amusing. "Was he upset?" "I don't know, I haven't seen him. Mom said he was just surprised and left. I'll find out at dinner tonight. I've thought up some believable lies," Janet boasted. "Are you going to keep seeing Brad?" Debbie asked. "Maybe a few more times, but he's not that fun. Shane is more entertaining. Brad talks about himself too much." "No, I think you should date him from now on," I said, stepping into their conversation. Janet gasped as I walked away. I didn't speak to her again. 10 years later, she saw Stacy and me at our reunion and tried to talk. I simply took my wife's hand and walked away without a word. Stacy was shocked by my rudeness, but I couldn't overlook the past. I believe in treating people the way I want to be treated, and in being loyal, maybe too loyal. Despite moving away, I still visit the same hairdresser I used when I was 19. I have clients I've outgrown, but I won't let them go because they were there for me in the beginning. Even if it's not the best business decision, it's about loyalty. People think I'm too harsh about these things, but it's like a personal code for me. I stay true to myself and won't change just to please others. You'd think Stacy would have known better than to betray me, but she did. Tears rolled down my face. I had never felt so betrayed, and knowing it was by someone who claimed to love me made it worse. As I lay there, I wondered why this had happened. There was no warning. One minute I was happy and married, and the next, everything was falling apart. Of course, you hear that women cheat for emotional reasons, but I don't know if that's true or if it even matters. I hadn't cried since I was a kid, but that night, I cried a lot, haunted by questions with no answers. Eventually, I fell asleep. Waking up to city noise instead of birds was a harsh start to the day. I missed being in bed with Stacy, seeing her smile at me. I missed her terribly. After heating up some coffee and taking a shower, I felt a bit better. Not much, but a bit. I went to Denny's, thinking about what to do next. I couldn't stay in the studio all day, I'd go mad. As I finished my coffee, I suddenly thought of the girl from the motel. I hadn't thought about her since she called the taxi. But there she was in my mind, with her full black hair, high cheekbones, and big brown eyes. She had a natural smile and a friendly way about her. I wondered if she'd ever considered modeling. After paying for my coffee, I decided to visit the motel to see if it was open. Feeling a bit more energetic, I grabbed my keys and laptop and headed out. When I entered the lobby, there she was behind the counter. Now I just needed to figure out how to talk to her about modeling. I've helped newcomers before, but never approached someone like this. I waited until her coworker stepped away, then approached her at the counter. "Hello? Can I help you?" She greeted me with that natural smile. "You probably don't remember me." "Of course I remember you. Need another taxi?" she asked. "No, I have my car today," I laughed. "You were really helpful last time, and I'd like to return the favor. Here's my business card." "I'm Shane Burke, a commercial photographer. I work with models daily." "I was wondering if you've ever considered modeling?" I asked. "I need to take a few test shots, but I think you'd be great in front of the camera." She looked skeptical. "Test shots? Do I need to undress?" Sadly, my industry has a few bad apples who misuse their cameras. "No, you won't need to undress," I assured her.
Look, I have my laptop here. I can show you my work. Do you have time for a coffee break? If not, maybe lunch on me? She seemed to weigh her options, then smiled slightly. Okay, I have lunch at 11:30. There's a restaurant across the street. Actually, I'm not welcome there. It's a long story, I said with a grin, trying to keep it light. Is there another place you like? How about Starlight Cafe around the corner? She suggested. Perfect. Starlight Cafe at 11:30, I confirmed. After leaving, I thought about a photo shoot she'd be perfect for. I had some time, so I called Monk, a talented makeup artist I frequently work with. Would you be interested in a TFP shoot? I asked. Who's the model? A potential new star. She's naturally beautiful, maybe Greek, with black hair and dark eyes. Sounds great for that upcoming jewelry shoot, Monk replied. Let me know if she's interested. Thanks, Monk. I'll update you soon, I said. Next, I called Donna, a stylist I work with often. I knew she'd likely be available. Completing my team was just a matter of getting the model on board. I returned to the cafe early and waited. When she arrived, she brought a friend from the motel who wore a badge. Hi, Mr. Burke. Hope it's okay I brought a friend, she said as they sat down. Don't worry, he'll pay for his own lunch, I assured. The waitress came over and I was prepared to let her friend pay for himself, but decided to cover it, thinking she was just being cautious. Before I could speak, her friend asked defensively, How do we know you're legitimate? Anyone can make a business card. Do you have references? This put me on the spot unnecessarily. Okay, this isn't working, I said, frustrated. I left $30 on the table for the lunch and left. Back at the studio, my phone rang. It was Marcy. How's it going? Could be better, I replied. Are you at the office? Yes, back now. I might head to Daily around noon. Need anything? I can come keep you company, maybe plan a future shoot, she offered. Thanks, but I'm okay. Enjoy the long weekend. Are you sure? Yes, see you Monday. We said goodbye. I went to Daily for lunch, but by 2:30 I felt lost. I lay in the back room cursing the day. I tried to distract myself with photo editing but couldn't focus. Around 5, I considered going to the cinema when I heard a knock. It was Electra standing alone outside the studio. I opened the door. Hi, I'm glad I caught you before you left, she said shyly. Tony was just looking out for me and I wanted to say sorry for leaving abruptly. Did you come here to apologize? She asked. Yes. I felt bad about how I left. I thought about calling, but I wanted to apologize face to face, I explained. It turned out she lived 45 minutes away, maybe more during rush hour. Thanks for making the trip, I said. Since you're here, why don't I show you around the studio? After a quick tour, which cost her just 25 cents, we sat in my office. I offered her coffee and showed her my website and portfolio. She was impressed, but still a bit unsure. Do I need to sign any contracts? She asked. No contracts needed, I assured her. You'll just need to sign a modeling agreement which allows us to use your photos. She paused, then asked, Can we take some photos now? Not today, I replied, seeing her disappointment. First, you'll need a stylist and makeup artist and not wear your work uniform. Her mood lifted when I mentioned there'd be no cost to her. It's free. I'm offering you a chance to earn, not spend. You'll sign a modeling agreement and that's how you'll pay the makeup artist and stylist. They'll use your photos for their portfolios. Is that okay? Yes, sure, she agreed. Great, let's plan it then, I said. She noted down my schedule and I called my contacts while she was there. We set up a time for Sunday afternoon and reserved 4 hours for the shoot. I asked her to bring various outfits and arrive without makeup. My makeup artist will handle that, I explained. We talked a bit more and she thanked me repeatedly before leaving around 8. This distraction was what I needed. For the first time in days, I wasn't thinking about Stacy. Now I had something new to focus on. I sat down and began planning the shoot. Suddenly it was midnight. I dreaded going to bed, knowing the misery that awaited. Lying there, I wondered about Stacy. Was she asleep? Had she come back? Did she regret what she did? I pictured her crying, and despite everything, I felt for her. It was sheer agony, knowing our relationship was over despite my love for her. Somehow I drifted off, and the next thing I knew, it was morning. I started my day with breakfast at Deli, a new routine. Midway, Jerry called, but I didn't answer. I hate cold pancakes. He texted instead, wanting to meet for coffee. We had never just hung out alone, so it was clear he wanted to talk about Stacy. I met Jerry at a Starbucks. "How are you?" he asked, knowing it was a tough question. I didn't respond. "Has she come back home?" "No, she's still very upset and not alone," he explained. "She's constantly upset about how she hurt you." Jerry shared that Stacy and Gwen often discussed why she did it, influenced by silly novels she read as a teen about romantic affairs. "Jealous of your exciting job," he added, recalling how she loved the shoot with the rock band and kept talking about it long after. We discussed how her fascination with that day seemed like the most thrilling event of her life. We reminisced about other times, like dinner at Alpine, trying to recall who else was there that night. After coffee, we parted ways. Talking to Jerry helped me accept that things with Stacy were truly over, not just because of my anger or unwillingness to forgive, but because trust couldn't be restored. That night, I slept a bit easier, though the sadness lingered. I got up early the next morning, set up for a shoot with Alta, and then met Marcy at the office. We planned an upcoming jewelry shoot but kept it quiet in case it didn't work out. Later, we prepared for a major shoot downtown, hoping Alta could join us as a model. This happened a few years back. I remembered Joe and Doris were part of it. Joe had noticed something and started visiting your house, claiming he was in the area. Stacy didn't mention it because Joe told her not to. He warned her that Doris would get very upset if she knew he was just dropping by. Joe also noticed Stacy was jealous of you and used that to manipulate her. He suggested she should try new things, even going as far as suggesting she have an affair. I thought he sounded experienced in this, and he admitted to her that he had affairs before and described them as thrilling. He encouraged her to do the same, and that's when she recalled a novel that glamorized affairs. Jerry paused to sip his coffee, then continued. Initially, Stacy was afraid, knowing you'd end things if you found out, but Joe convinced her you'd never know. It was supposed to be a secret adventure with someone she trusted, he suggested himself. Listening to Jerry, I regretted not confronting Joe more aggressively. Stacy hesitated for a long time because she was scared. But when you were out of town, Joe saw his chance and started planning. She thought it would remain a secret and found the idea thrilling, like living out a fantasy. I couldn't believe how Joe had manipulated her. Jerry joked that maybe Doris had taken care of Joe for good. I joked about buying Doris a new shovel. I was frustrated that Stacy fell for it when she could have sought thrills in safer ways like skydiving. Jerry sadly noted there was no going back. It wasn't just a one-off thing. They had met twice before. If I hadn't caught them, it would have happened again. I couldn't live always worrying about her fidelity. Jerry understood, admitting Stacy knew there was no chance for reconciliation. He wondered if there was any slight hope, but I knew it was over. Stacy should have considered the consequences. Jerry tried to lighten the mood by asking if my job was really that exciting. I explained that while it's not always exciting, it's interesting and involves constant creative challenges. We talked over 2 more cups of coffee. It was good talking to Jerry without our partners around. He was funny and a great conversationalist. After our chat, I accepted that there was no way back for me and Stacy. I had to move on. That night, I slept a bit easier, but still thought about the loss and sadness. The next morning, I got up early to prepare for a shoot with Alta. After setting up, I had breakfast, then discussed with Marcy about using Electra for a big upcoming jewelry shoot. We planned a major shoot in the Chicago Loop, which required tight security due to the valuable jewelry. Mulkey and Donya arrived, and I briefed them. When Electra arrived, she looked stunning even without makeup. My team was impressed, and I felt hopeful about her fitting in perfectly for the shoot. The girls quickly gathered around her, helping her choose outfits and leading her to the locker room at the back. Once she was ready, Marcy trusted her to the skilled hands of Mulkey and Donya and went back to get the studio set up. "This girl is fantastic," Marcy said. "I can't wait to see her on camera." I agreed. By the end of the day, Alexa had shown us all that she really was as talented as I thought. I gave her some tips on posing for the camera and thinking about the lighting. She moved elegantly and followed directions perfectly. We filmed for 4 hours, taking breaks to touch up makeup and change hairstyles. When we finished, we had hundreds of photos showing 3 different looks and many outfit changes. Everyone was eager to see them.
So Marcy made more coffee while I uploaded everything to the computer. Over the next hour, we all admired the amazing photos. I had a busy day on Monday, so I planned to edit some pictures that night. At 3 a.m., I emailed the team. I sent 10 photos showcasing different hairstyles for Donna, another 10 showing makeup for Monkey, and 25 photos for Electra. I was so tired I barely thought of Stacy before falling asleep. The next morning, as I started to wake up, I thought I smelled coffee. A voice and a gentle nudge told me this wasn't a dream. I opened my eyes. "Time to get up, lazy bones," Marcy said with a big smile, handing me a cup of coffee. I reached for the cup and then realized why she was smiling. I always slept without clothes. Embarrassed, I quickly covered up. "Relax, I've seen it before," she said with a laugh, and left saying it was nearly 7:30 a.m. She closed the door. It was 7:30 a.m. already, and I had overslept with so much to do. I quickly drank some coffee and hurried to the shower. 20 minutes later, I joined Marcy, who was looking at the photos. "Alex, this is incredible. She could really make it big if she's careful," I said. Marcy agreed. I opened another file. "Here are some test shots for next month's jewelry campaign," I explained. "I'll send them to Chaz today." Chaz Martin was in charge of accounts for the Sterling jewelry chain, my biggest client. "I can't see why he'd have any objections. She's perfect," I mused, knowing the industry can be unpredictable. I decided to wait for firm approval from Chaz before telling Electra anything. I checked the day's schedule. I had 2 shoots, both simple and in the studio. It was almost 8:45 a.m. I planned to call my lawyer at 9, so I sent Chaz the test shots first. "Are you hungry? Want me to grab something from Denny's?" Marcy asked. I often wondered what I would do without her. I hired her 3 years ago when she was 19 and studying graphic art at Columbia University, looking for a summer job. She fell in love with photography and decided she could learn more with me than at college, so I offered her a full-time job. She was attractive, with long blonde hair and blue eyes, a bit plump, which suited her. Now that I was divorcing, I might have considered dating her if not for her boyfriend. They had been together for over a year and seemed likely to get married. I gave her some money and asked her to buy breakfast for us both. After she left, I called my lawyer to discuss the divorce. I was willing to let my wife have the house if she waived any claims on my business. I wasn't sure how much it was worth, but it was between $70,000 and $80,000. The lawyer said he would have the papers ready soon. Marcy came back with our food, and we chatted and joked before getting back to work. We were just starting to prepare for the first shoot when the phone rang. "Photograph of Burke. Who is this?" Shane asked. "She's perfect for the Sterling shoot," I replied. "She's available since you got the test pictures. Her name is Electra." I didn't want to get her hopes up until she was confirmed for the job. "When can you let me know?" he asked urgently. "I should have an answer by tomorrow," I said. "Great," Chaz replied. "The job pays $1,200 and I think she'll be great for it." "I'm sure," I agreed, but reminded him to check with Sterling. "No need," he said. "They trust my judgment on models." Marcy overheard the call and was waiting for me with a big smile when I got back. "This should earn you some thanks," she said cheerfully. There were complications, though. I wasn't divorced yet, and Electra was quite young, probably 20 or 21. I would never put her in a compromising position for a job. Marcy knew me better than that. We had some time before filming again, so I called Electra and left a message for her to call back. She returned my call just after 4. I got straight to the point. "You've just landed your first modeling job," I announced. I spoke to her, and her loud scream nearly made me deaf. I checked my ears before continuing. "The photo shoot is at night. We've got 2 places in mind. You might need to take the next day off because we'll shoot from 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. I mentioned wanting to take some pictures at sunrise. She was a bit unsure until I mentioned the cost, $1,200. She screamed again. "Oh my God, that's almost what I earn in a month." "There will be a van from the agency. They'll do your makeup and hair, and it also serves as a dressing room so you'll have your own space. You'll be working with another model," I added, "and we'll have guards for safety." "Guards?" she repeated. "Yes, you'll be wearing very expensive jewelry all night. We always have armed guards for such shoots." "Oh my God!" she screamed again, thrilled. I could tell she was really happy. It was good to see her so excited. "We have 23 days to get you ready.
You were great last time, but this is different. You'll have to change poses smoothly with another model without me guiding you. Can you come to the studio next weekend for training? Absolutely, she replied. I think I smiled as we ended the call. Marcy asked if Electra was excited. That's an understatement, I said. My ears were still ringing despite the looming divorce. Still, it had been a good week. Electra did well, and we landed a new client. Later, I thought the fax was about a new job, but it churned out divorce papers. Divorce seemed to overshadow everything again. I felt gloomy. I still had computer work, but the filming was done for the day. I let Marcy leave early. I made myself some coffee and sat down to read the divorce papers. They looked fair on the surface, but I knew the studio had more potential than what the house would sell for. She'd keep the car, half of our $15,000 savings, and most of the furniture. All I wanted was my office equipment. It seemed like a fair trade. I hope she agrees. It took me a while to get through the legal terms. I thought about giving Stacy the papers that night, but decided to wait. Deep down, I was just delaying the inevitable. I didn't want to deal with it that night. I ended up going to Denny's, then back to the studio to edit a bit, but my heart wasn't in it. I couldn't sleep, troubled by this critical decision in my life. Marrying Stacy was one of the biggest decisions I ever made, as was starting my own business. Both decisions were supported by Stacy. Now, I had to decide if I could live without her. She had cheated, and I couldn't trust her like before. Doubt and suspicion had replaced trust. I don't think Stacy could ever be the same either, even if she tried to fix things. This wasn't a marriage that could be saved. It was over, hard as it was to admit. I had a studio shoot to distract me. We were busier, so I didn't have to think about the divorce too much. After the shoot, Marcy noticed I was quiet. "Thinking about Stacy?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm serving her divorce papers tonight, and I'm not looking forward to it." "Why don't we take a break and grab a late lunch somewhere nice?" Marcy suggested. That sounded good. We talked about various things, avoiding my family issues. I felt a bit better afterwards. Later, I called Jerry Carlson to arrange to see Stacy. He said she was staying with them for another week. I asked for some privacy when I visited. It was nearly 7 p.m. when I rang their doorbell. Jerry answered, "Did you eat? We've just finished dinner, but I'm sure we can find some leftovers if you're hungry." "Thanks, Jerry, but I need to do this now," I replied with a sad tone. He glanced at the A4 envelope in my hand and nodded slowly, understanding the situation. "Gwen," he called, "Shane is here to talk to Stacy. Let's give them some space." Moments later, Gwen appeared. When she saw me, she closed her eyes and quickly shook her head without speaking, then followed Jerry upstairs. I turned the corner. Through the kitchen doorway, I saw Stacy sitting at the table, staring blankly ahead. I'll never forget her face when she saw me and glanced at the envelope. She looked terrified, as if I was there to take something very precious from her. I sat down across from her. Stacy was staring blankly at the table's surface. Slowly, she looked up as I said her name. "I'm sorry," she whispered weakly. "I know," I answered, "but it's not enough." "I know," she repeated. "I asked Bright Newcomb to get the papers ready," I continued. "I'm giving you the house, the car, and half my savings." "Why?" she asked. "Because I want full ownership of the business. I think it's fair," I explained. "I'm really sorry, Shane," she said again, tears in her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I thought about lashing out at her. But it had been over a week since everything happened. I had calmed down and realized how much she was already hurting. "I know," I said. "Jerry told me you did it to add excitement to your life. I wish you had talked to me if you were unhappy." "We could have found another way to make your life more exciting," I continued, feeling my emotions rise. I placed the envelope on the table and stood up. "Look at these, Stacy. If you think they're unfair, tell me." She tried to stop herself from crying but couldn't hold it back completely. "It's all my fault, Shane. I don't deserve this," she sobbed. "Just look at them anyway," I said as I started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. "I should have said this before. I will always love you, Stacy. They say there's a thin line between love and hate. Last week, I hated you a bit. I might still feel some hate, but I will always love you," I added, and then hurried out, only pausing to shout a thank you to Gwen and Jerry from afar. A mile from their house, I had to stop to wipe away my tears. I'm not one to drink much, just a beer with friends or at business events. But that night was different. I parked my car and walked to a bar I'd never entered before, despite passing it countless times. I sat in a dark corner and had 4 beers. By the time I got back to my bed, it was after 1 in the morning. Luckily, I fell asleep as soon as my head hit the pillow, wondering how Stacy was doing. On Saturday, I started apartment hunting. I was tired of living in the studio's back room and hoped to find a place close by. I found a nice 2-bedroom with a stone patio on North LaSalle and put down a deposit while waiting for a credit check. The best part was the underground parking. It's a lifesaver in Chicago winters. Sunday came as a blessing. I'd been feeling down since Friday, but work was the best distraction. I arrived around 11 and we worked until 3. It was just the 2 of us. I wasn't aiming for perfect shots. It was a training session. I taught her how to move smoothly between poses and wait for the flash before moving again. We discussed lighting and how to avoid casting shadows on the other model. I explained photography terms and gave her tips on which gigs to accept and which to avoid. By the end of the day, I was sure Alexa could make it big in modeling if she avoided the usual pitfalls. We planned 2 more sessions before our shoot in 2 weeks. I was sad to see her leave, as she had distracted me from thoughts of Stacy and the divorce. Monday was dull until the afternoon when my phone rang twice. The first call was from the apartment management. My loan was approved and I could move in the next day. The second was from Jerry, wanting to meet after work. We met at the usual Starbucks. He had the envelope. "Check these instead of a lawyer," he suggested. I assured him everything looked fine. "No tricks, Jerry. You know me better," I said, slightly offended. "I know, I'm sorry, I'm just not used to all this legal stuff," he replied, handing me the envelope. I had to ask, "How is she?" "She'll be fine. The waiting was the hardest part for her. Now that you've given her the papers, I think she's accepted it, though she'd jump back into your arms if you forgave her." "Well, that won't happen," I said. Serving those papers was the toughest thing I've ever done. But it had to be done. You know, before all this, I never thought you could both love and hate someone at the same time. Let me tell you, it really made me think about Gwen and me. Honestly, I don't know what I'd do in your shoes. I'd like to think I could be as brave as you, but I'm not sure. Jerry took a sip of his black coffee and went on. "One thing's for sure, it made me stop thinking about cheating. Not that I was considering it. Seeing what you 2 went through made me think twice. Gwen and I had a long talk last night, and it felt like we were renewing our vows right then and there. Hearing about Jerry and Gwen's strong relationship almost hurt. I secretly wished things were the same for Stacy and me. Have you heard from our friends?" I knew he meant our group. "We have so much in common." "Not a word," I replied. "I'm surprised you have so many supporters. Some women think you were too harsh and should give Stacy another chance. But the guys are all on your side. Does the whole town really know our business? Maybe Doris has been talking about her no-good husband and the woman who wrecked her happy home. Oh well, I shouldn't be surprised. She filed for divorce, right? Yes, and she's out for everything. Joe will be lucky to keep his socks when she's done with him." He chuckled. "Well, I need to get going," he said, finishing his coffee. "I think Stacy's coming back on Wednesday or Thursday. Don't worry," he added, seeing my worried look. "We'll keep an eye on her." I thanked him and asked him to say thanks to Gwen. "All right, it's all settled now. I'll give the signed papers to Bright. He'll take care of them, and in 6 months we'll be officially divorced." I had mixed feelings about it. It was the end of my marriage to Stacy. I thought we'd grow old together. Thinking about a future without her was sad, but I also felt a bit relieved. It's finally over and I can move on. Tuesday started like any normal day. The alarm went off. I had a few photo shoots lined up this week. Nothing big, but it kept me busy. Even though I had an apartment, I was still sleeping in the studio's back room. I didn't have any furniture yet. Every day I planned to buy some after work, but I was always too tired. To be honest, I wasn't that busy. I knew some of my tiredness came from feeling a bit down. By Sunday, I decided I had to move into my apartment, even if it meant sleeping on the floor. I was determined on Saturday. I bought a bed, a table, chairs, and an armchair. I took my office furniture out of storage and set it up in the spare room. We got everything in and set up by Sunday night. I filled the fridge, made some dinner, and then sat down with a coffee in my new chair. I looked around. It was so quiet. so empty. This was my life now, coming home to an empty apartment. We bought a few more things, a TV, a stereo, the essentials. The best part of this time was just working. Sometimes at night I thought about her. Just dreams. She was really focused on her modeling career. As much as it sounds hypocritical, I couldn't marry a model. Models travel a lot and get a lot of attention, often from rich men who want to be seen with them. No, especially after how my first marriage ended, I couldn't do it. The night of the big shoot finally came for Sterling. Sterling Jr. and Phil, the marketing VP, were there. Marcy brought Aaron, her boyfriend, to help with gear. We had 3 security guards, 2 makeup artists, and a stylist. 13 people in all. Good planning is key for big shoots like this. We filmed until the streets got busy after sunrise, then had to stop. I was happy with the results, and so was the client. Phil Sterling spent the evening hitting on Alberta. It was tough to watch. He was 20 years older than her and married. I pulled her aside while we were packing up and warned her about Sterling. She said she had to deal with the same thing at the hotel. She was always turning down advances politely. Over the next month, I used Electra as often as possible. She was making more in a week than a month at the hotel. She didn't want to leave, but a scheduling issue made her choose. In the end, she chose her modeling career over the hotel job. Everything worked out. Business was good, and my apartment was fully furnished. I heard from Gwen that Stacy was back home and managing okay. Some of our friends visited her, and someone even got her a job as a secretary. I was looking through photos when the phone rang. "Marcy, can you get that, please?" A minute later, she came back looking surprised. "It's Victor Sikorsky." I probably looked just as shocked as I turned to her. Victor Sikorsky, Chicago's top photographer, famous internationally, and a regular for Vogue, Mademoiselle, and Elle. He launched many supermodels' careers. Did he say what he wanted? No, he just wants to talk to you. She answered, clueless about why Victor Sikorsky would be interested in me. I jumped up and picked up the phone. "Hello, Shane, this is Victor Sikorsky. How are you?" "Fine, Victor. And you?" 73. And still feeling young, he joked. "Here's the simplified and straightforward rewrite of the provided text. Look, I'll be quick, but I want to use one girl for the photo shoot. She's not with any agency, so I asked around and everyone pointed me to you. She has brown hair and dark eyes," I interrupted him. "Yes, I often work with her. Her name is Electra. Is she free for a fashion shoot next week?" "I'm pretty sure she is." "Victor, can she call you?" "Of course, I'd appreciate that. Let me give you another number just in case she can't reach me at the studio." Victor gave me his cell number and asked me to have her call before tomorrow night. He had to make a quick decision. Marcy was there the whole time I talked to him. "He wants to use Electra?" she asked as soon as I hung up. "Yes," I said, maybe not as excitedly as I should have. "Don't you want her to do it?" "Of course I do. I just wish I could work with her more," I admitted, realizing it sounded selfish. "What do you mean?" Marcy questioned. "This is a big opportunity for her. I don't know who his client is, but she'll probably make more from this shoot than she has with us all this time." "I'm happy for her," I started, but Marcy cut in. "Shane, she owes you a lot. She wouldn't even be modeling if it weren't for you. I can't see her leaving us just for one shoot at Sikorsky. She won't have much choice, Marcy. Once her photo gets out there with his name, she'll be in demand worldwide. She'll earn way more than we can pay her," I mused, almost hesitant to relay Victor's message. It felt like losing 2 women in my life. It wasn't that I expected anything to happen between us, but I was very attached to her. I called her right away. At first, she resisted. She said she only wanted to work with me, but I explained that she couldn't make a living working with just one photographer. I almost ordered her to call Victor right after we talked. She promised she would. After a long silence, I started to worry she hadn't called or was ignoring it. Then she burst into the studio, nearly jumping on me. I got it, she screamed. "I got a job with Victor, Shane. How can I ever thank you? $35,000 for one shot? Can you imagine? $35,000? She hugged me tightly. Marcy just stood there with an "I told you so" look. I knew then that Electra was on her way to becoming a global star, and I might never see her again. "Just remember what I taught you, and be careful around guys like Phil Sterling," I advised. "They'll be all over now. Stay focused." "Yes, Dad," she said with a grin. "You'll need to sign with a few big agencies. They'll take a cut, but it helps other photographers find you. I made 300 comp cards for you. Start with Ford and Wilhelmina. They'll send them to their agencies in New York, Louisiana, and Paris." "Paris?" she exclaimed again. "Do you think I could really go there?" "I almost guarantee it," I said, trying to smile, though I felt like crying as I handed her the cards. "I'll handle everything tomorrow," she promised, then kissed me on the cheek. "I can't thank you enough, Shane. And you, Marcy," she added, turning back. Marcy just smiled and wished her luck. When Electra left the studio, or should I say floated away on a cloud, I knew I wouldn't see her again, at least not in person. $3,500 for one shoot, Marcy was shocked. "By this time next year, she'll be working with the top photographers and earning 4 times as much," I said. "She'll be mingling with the rich and famous and will barely be a memory," I said, looking at Marcy's sad face. "Come on," I encouraged with a smile. "Let's focus on the next few months." And that's exactly what I did. Work, work, and more work. That's what many do in situations like mine. They dive into work. The good part was the money was better than ever. The tough part was the loneliness. Marcy kept urging me to date again, but I wasn't ready. Honestly, finding out that your wife is cheating on you with someone else can really hit your confidence. Of all the friends Stacy and I had when we were married, only Jerry and Gwen stayed in touch. They even took me out to dinner once, and I met Jerry a few times for beers after work. They didn't make it awkward, but they did mention how Stacy was doing occasionally. I guess they did the same for her. It seemed she tried to keep the house, but after a few months of paying bills, she gave up. Gwen, always the optimist, would hint that Stacy wasn't seeing anyone either. I can't really blame her for that. One day I realized I was so caught up in work that I lost track of time. Of course, I kept up with my schedule. Monday, shooting. Wednesday, another shooting. But I had lost track of the calendar year. Days just blended together. It was Marcy who snapped me out of it. "Shane, I have Labor Day off, right? Aaron and I are visiting his parents." "Labor Day?" I asked. "Oh yes, of course. Enjoy your day off," I replied. Later that evening, I sat in my apartment realizing summer was almost over. I usually love summer, but this year I didn't enjoy it as much. Summers were always fun with Stacy, going to the beach, hanging out with friends, driving around to look at the sights. I remembered April and that bad photo shoot in Peoria. I tried to remember a happy moment since then, but couldn't find any. And now, summer was almost over. It was quite sad. The next day, things changed. Jerry called and invited me to a Labor Day party at his place. I hesitated at first, thinking Stacy might be there and I wasn't ready to see her, but he said she had other plans. I didn't ask what they were. He convinced me to come and I started looking forward to it. The day was warm and sunny, perfect for an outdoor party. When I got there, I saw many people I hadn't seen in months. People mentioned my recent divorce, but after that I started enjoying the party. There were a few new faces too. One woman caught my eye. She wasn't stunning, but she was pretty and had an impressive figure. I watched her for a while and noticed she wasn't with anyone. Just as I was about to say hello, someone else started talking to me. When I looked back, she was gone. I didn't want to seem desperate, so I went to get some food. While waiting for Jerry to serve me a burger, she appeared behind me. "You're a photographer, right?" Jerry introduced us. "Shane, meet Sydney. She works with Gwen." Sydney shook my hand and said, "Nice to meet you." I asked if she liked photography as Jerry handed us our food. "I don't take photos, but I like looking at them," she said. She heard I was famous. I laughed and said, "Not really. No one knows me just a few blocks from my studio." We sat under a tree and talked while eating. She was from a small town and had moved to Chicago 3 years ago. She was fun and had a great sense of humor. We laughed a lot, which felt good. As the party ended, she asked about visiting my studio. "Anytime," I said. "Just let me know when." "Are you open on weekends?" she asked. "Not usually, but you can come by," I replied. I spend a lot of time there on weekends editing photos. The next day, I couldn't stop smiling. I planned to take her out after showing her my studio. She seemed interested, so I was hopeful. I was humming while setting up for a shoot. Marcy noticed and asked what was up. I just said I was feeling better. On Saturday, I got to the studio early to tidy up. I made coffee and chilled some beers. She arrived looking great. We toured the studio and I showed her how I worked. Then we looked at some of my recent work over beers. I had to step out for a minute, and when I came back, she was gone. I called out and she answered from the studio. I found her posing in front of my flashes, ready for a photo shoot. I was surprised, but went along with it, helping her pose and taking some artistic shots. She was thrilled with the photos. It turned into a memorable day. I made a few quick changes to the best photos and printed them for her. She was happy to go out for dinner, and afterwards we went to my place. She looked around and commented, "I see your skills as a photographer don't carry over to decorating." She was joking, but she had a point. "I don't need much," I responded. "I'm mostly in my studio. I just need a place to eat and sleep here." "Sleep?" she asked playfully. "Where do you do that?" My heart raced a bit. "Right here," I said, leading her to the bedroom by the hand. The bedroom wasn't any fancier than the living room, but the mattress was comfortable. It was useful for such moments. We spent the night together. I wanted her to stay, but she had work early the next day and decided to leave after a shower. The first really cold day of the season brought the final papers of my divorce in the mail. It felt like a sign. Sydney and I met up a few times a week, but there wasn't much of a spark. When I received the mail, I saw the divorce papers right away and left the rest on the table. Most of it was work stuff, which Marcy looked through. "You were wrong," she said, holding a postcard. "Wrong about what?" I asked. "You said we'd never hear from her again. She's busy." She showed us a postcard from Paris. "Can't be. What does it say?" I asked. She read the brief message. "I did it. I still don't know how I can thank you. With love." The timing was perfect. Reading about the dissolution of my marriage was tough, but the postcard from Electra lifted my spirits. It was the end of one chapter and the start of another. A month later, it was already snowy, and temperatures had dropped to about 35 degrees. Winter was coming fast. I had rekindled a few friendships at Jerry's Labor Day party, and sometimes Sydney joined me at events, but I wasn't really dating. I heard from friends that Stacy was seeing a nice guy from her job. They had gone to a company picnic on Labor Day. That explained her absence from Jerry's party. Secretly, I wished her the best. I had once loved her deeply and couldn't hold a grudge forever. If you've been to Chicago in winter, you know the trouble with parking. I didn't mind the cold or the wind as long as I didn't have to drive to work. I'd leave my car in the lot, grab a thermos of hot coffee, and walk the 13 blocks to the studio. I always passed a magazine stand, a reminder of old Chicago. I usually glanced at the magazine covers. One cold day in late February, the March issue of Vogue caught my eye. The cover said, "The world's newest supermodels," featuring a stunning photo of Electra. The photo was taken by a famous photographer. I was really happy for her and smiled as I walked past. Maybe we'll meet again someday, I thought, though it seemed unlikely. She was moving in different circles now, but I could always say I knew her, even if no one would believe it. I had just arrived at the studio when Marcy burst in, excitedly waving her copy of Vogue. "Shane, did you see this?" she almost yelled. "Yes, I'm happy for her," I replied, surprised by her excitement. Marcy was a bit jealous of Electra since she didn't work with us anymore. "Are you happy for her? Did you read the article?" she asked. "No, I just saw the cover on the way here." "Shane, the article is all about you," she exclaimed. "What?" I wasn't sure I heard right. "She talks about how you discovered her and taught her everything. She says you were like a second father to her, always looking out for her." "And she mentioned me?" I asked, taking the magazine. I sat down and started reading. Everything was there. I've been praised throughout my career, but this was something special. "What do you think of her now?" I asked Marcy, who was smiling. "Hey, I've always liked Electra," she replied, feeling a bit guilty. I just laughed. Then Victor called, congratulating me. He was a bit jealous he wasn't mentioned, but he said I deserved every word. I thanked him. Then several more calls came in, all boosting my mood. Later, my phone rang, and it was Stacy. "Hi, Shane." Her voice was much lighter than before. "Hello. How are you?" I asked. "I'm good," she said with a chuckle. "You know, when I mess up big. If I hadn't been so foolish, I could have been married to a world-famous photographer." I laughed. "Sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm still the same hard-working photographer you knew." "You won't be for long," she replied. "I think helping that model has really kicked off a new career for you, Shane. I just wanted to call and say well done. You really deserve all the good things coming your way."
You're not only a talented photographer, but also a wonderful person. I still care a lot about this woman. I realize this because her call mattered to me more than any others." "Thanks, Stacy. I also hope everything goes well for you. I heard there's someone new in your life." Ha ha! I could almost hear her laughing while she said that. "It seems like news travels fast among friends." She laughed. "I'm seeing someone too. His name is Spencer. He works in sales at my company. He's a good guy, Shane. I think you'd like him. Anyway, I really wish you the best, Stacy." "Thanks, Shane." After that, we said our goodbyes. Hearing her voice brought back some nice memories of our time together. I could picture her standing there. The deep love I once felt has faded, and with it, the hurt and anger too. She was right about one thing. That photo shoot really did start a new chapter for my career. My big break came when I got to shoot the cover for Chicago magazine. Then I went to California to shoot swimsuits, followed by a fashion shoot for Elle magazine. Then it was back to the studio for a big ad campaign for Maybelline. I promoted Marcy from assistant to lead photography assistant and brought on 3 more assistants, 2 for me and 1 for her. I also had to buy more gear. I didn't want to, but I ended up spending $42,000 on a camera, not counting another $18,000 for lenses. Marcy was worried about not having the right lights for shooting on location. So, I got some battery-operated studio lights that we could take with us. They cost $2,000 each, and I bought 6, 3 for her and 3 for me. Over the next few months, we traveled to Iceland, the Greek islands, and London. We worked with movie stars, supermodels, and celebrities. It was a hot Thursday when we got back to Chicago. Aaron was there to meet us at O'Hare Airport that afternoon. I've never seen 2 people so happy to see each other. They rushed towards each other so fast I thought they might crash. Aaron helped with the gear, but then I told them to go ahead. He asked if I was sure I could manage. I just nodded and told Marcy to take a long weekend off. All I wanted was to get back to my simple place and relax. But first, I had to drop the equipment off at the studio. It was great to be home. It felt like the walls were welcoming me when I walked in. It was about 8 in the evening when I got to my apartment. Good thing I had some frozen dinners left. I heated one up, made some coffee, tried to watch some TV, but ended up falling asleep in my chair. I don't remember when I moved to bed, but it was around 10 in the morning when I finally woke up. After showering and dressing, I went out for breakfast at Denny's, then made my first call of the day to my business manager, Steve Warren. Now that I was doing well, I needed a manager. Steve took care of all my business calls, travel plans, and bookings. We didn't chat about personal stuff, it was all business. As soon as he answered, he got right to the point. He asked if I'd like to shoot for the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Are you kidding? This was a big deal in my field. So, I have to pick between this and another job? No, that wasn't necessary. Electra, one of the models, had recommended me for the shoot, and the editor agreed. "I'm in," I said excitedly. "Are we filming in Bora Bora?" He confirmed, but there was more. They were also considering me for next year's Pioli calendar, another big opportunity. I was overwhelmed, but tried not to get too excited. There was also a studio shoot coming up for a new line of raincoats. They needed a rainy night scene, and since it wasn't going to rain, I'd have to create the rain myself. I already had a plan for it. After hanging up, I decided to celebrate. Sid called, and we made plans for dinner on Saturday and to catch up later. Jerry also called to welcome me back. He and Gwen wanted to hear all about my travels over dinner on Sunday. I never leave things until the last minute, so I went to the studio to unpack my equipment and prepare for the Wednesday shoot. Time flew as I got into my work, and soon it was time for dinner and a good night's sleep. Saturday evening was nice. Sid and I were just friends, but we enjoyed each other's company. She was smart, spoke well, and we got along great. We went to a lovely restaurant for dinner and then to a jazz club she enjoyed. They got back to me around midnight, and we were both eager to have some fun. She didn't have work the next day, so she stayed over, which I always enjoyed. On Sunday, I was invited to dinner at Gwen and Jerry's house. They were eager to hear about my trip to Greece. They had always wanted to visit, but couldn't afford it. They were still saving, so they were curious about every detail. I checked if I could bring another guest, and I took Sid with me. I entertained everyone with my stories during and after dinner. Everyone was shocked when I mentioned my project with Nicole Reynolds in London for an ad. Nicole was a famous actress and stunningly beautiful. Then I talked about supermodel Claudia Stafford.
Jerry didn't recognize her, but Gwen did. She surprised us by fetching a Victoria's Secret catalog to show Jerry a photo of Claudia. Jerry was stunned. "Wow," was all he said. "Let me see," Sid requested, and Gwen showed him the photo. Sid gave me a knowing look, and I just smiled. "Did you get our cards?" I asked. "Yeah, and your ex's too," Jerry said before Gwen could stop him. "My ex? I didn't send her any cards." It turned out I had dropped one when she was here last. Gwen explained that it fell and slid under a chair, and when she picked it up, she saw it was from me, from the Virgin Islands. She didn't say much, but I saw tears in her eyes when she handed it back. I sighed, understanding how she must have felt. "It had to be that card," I said. "We went there for our honeymoon. It's the only time she traveled outside the U.S., besides a trip to Nova Scotia. She must miss it a lot," Sid added. "She probably regrets everything every day." "I know she does," Gwen said. Later, Gwen and Sid went off to chat, and Jerry and I stepped out onto the terrace with some beers. "You've got a great life, don't you?" he said. "London, Greece, exotic islands. Incredible." "It sure feels like a dream," I agreed. Stacy will never forgive herself. She talks to Gwen almost daily and can't believe how much she messed things up. She thinks she should have traveled with me, I told him. The last I heard, she was seeing someone from work. "He's a nice guy, but a bit dull," I said. "But he really loves her. You can tell by the way he looks at her." "They might get married," I noted. "I'm happy for her," I sincerely said. "Life's strange, isn't it? If I hadn't caught Stacy cheating, I wouldn't be where I am today. I'd still be working locally." "You're talented, Shane," Jerry tried to assure me. "No, it's more than that. That day changed everything. I met Electra, and she kick-started her modeling career with my help. She got me big projects. And here I am," I continued, taking a sip of beer. "I'm really enjoying life. I work hard, and though I miss being loved, I like my freedom. I'm not thinking about marriage yet. I'm just enjoying my bachelor life, meeting movie stars and supermodels," I added with a laugh. "Here's to the single life," Jerry toasted, raising his bottle. "To the single life," I echoed, clinking bottles with him. Working with Electra again was fun. When she saw me in Bora Bora, she ran and hugged me like a long-lost relative. She was always a standout at shoots and got picked for a magazine cover. Since then, I've been traveling the world. Marcy and Aaron got married, and I hired him so they could travel together. He doesn't earn much, but Marcy does well, so they manage. "You're doing exactly what I said you would," Jerry noted. "So far, I've met many famous faces. I've made it a goal to meet every top model from Victoria's Secret, and I'm nearly there. When I'm home, I always catch up with Jerry and Gwen. Last I heard, Stacy and her new guy, Spencer, were getting married. I haven't met him yet, but he knows all about me." Stacy was unsure about inviting me to the wedding. I checked the calendar, and I'll be working in the Cayman Islands on that date. Next, I need to fly to Los Angeles. I've been invited to a party at a fashion magazine's big house. Maybe I'll meet the perfect girl there, maybe not. Either way, I'm not going to miss this chance. Thanks for listening to One Infidelity Hit. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and drop us a like.